After 4 decades of pastoral ministry, how does someone begin a brand new chapter? Are you ready to face the truth? Face the Truth Live is the monthly podcast from the Truth Church of Olathe, Kansas, with our pastor and Bible teacher, Bishop Gregory Riggin. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Face the Truth. In just a short period of time, you will become bishop over a church that you have pastored for 30 years. And no doubt this transition as it nears, there are questions that still don't have answers to, and conversations that you and Sister Riggin have had probably still feel challenging to navigate through. But as this next chapter does not only encapsulate the Truth Church of Olathe, Kansas, but over 4 decades of full-time ministry. And we've talked about this before. Ministry is your calling. And how do you take this next step as you transition from one thing and open a brand new chapter, as our hook stated, into something that you have to face here in just a short period of time, Bishop?
Well, it is a deep, deep question with no easy answers. And it's waters that, for the most part, I've never really navigated. I'm not going to go into the details. We did try 9 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but 9 years ago, I made a step in this direction that, for a number of reasons, did not pan out. Um, but But this one is obviously going to be for good. So there's a lot of, and I know that I'm weighing my words, but this is not an easy topic for
Right.
me today, even though this is obviously what we agreed probably needs to be discussed. My hope is that somewhere someone else may either be going through it or about to go through it. And if I can say something that will benefit them, will help them along the way, I think it'll be worth us having this very uncomfortable conversation. In fact, in a few moments, I'm going to bring my wife into the conversation as well and let her just talk a little bit from her perspective. But here's the thing, Brother Goff. I have been a pastor for 42 years,
Mm.
consecutive years. Unlike many men, maybe most men, I never had a time of evangelizing. I never hit the field for full time. Again, that one exception 9 years ago, I spent 6 weeks doing some traveling, mostly connected to our missionary endeavors. Uh, Outside of that, this is all I've ever known. And where this is different from most people who go through a job change or go into retirement, and that's a word I'm not using. I'm not considering myself retired. Um, to me, that has a connotation all its own.
Sure.
Uh, and that's something Bishop Johnson has stressed many times. He said, I am not retired. He's still traveling. He's still preaching out. And that's my hope, that there is still going to be a desire, a need for a worn out old man who has spent 42 years as a pastor. I really don't have any experience as an evangelist other than doing the work of an evangelist as a pastor, which is something Paul commanded Timothy to do. Beyond that, this is a totally new chapter for me and for my wife. And here's why it's so different for us than it is for most people who simply retire from a job. Obviously, we're not the first person to work 30 plus years at one location and then step down from that. But what makes this so different is that for these 30 years plus 12 previous years, pastor has not been my job. It's been my identity. And 42 years, I have done my best to lead a specific flock of people, a specific group of individuals in one location. I've tried to be their spiritual leader. I've tried to be their guide, their advisor, their counselor, their prayer partner. Everything that being a pastor involves in a local assembly, one local assembly. That's who we've been. Again, not just a job, not just a duty, a responsibility, a title. It's our life. It's our identity in every way.
Yes, sir.
And now, as of April the 14th, and today we are doing this live recording, which will be aired hopefully within a few days on Apple, Spotify, and whatever other locations. But we are literally just about a month and a half, about 6 weeks away from me stepping away from this role as pastor and stepping into a brand new role. Before I get into all of that, let me just lay this out for everybody. If they haven't heard, if they're not aware, April the 14th, which is a Tuesday night, I am going to officially install Brother Jared Hilton, our producer for this podcast. I'm going to install him as pastor of the Truth Church. Now, although that is the night of the official installation, that's not something we're advertising. It's not something we're sending out flyers. We're inviting a very limited number of people, mostly just close family to Brother Hilton. I'm not even inviting my own family that night. A few friends, I think some of the Sons in the Gospel have asked if they could be here, and that's fine for them to be in attendance. But this is not a big public thing. And the reason why we're doing it this way is because Brother Hilton's one request of this transition was that I preach his installation service. However, I don't feel comfortable sending out invitations to people, asking them to come hear me preach. Something I just will not do. In time past, we used to have what we called a SOAR conference, Strengthening Our Apostolic Roots, SOAR, and I would invite the men with whom I was raised out of the home church in Dallas. I would have them come. They were the special speakers during that conference. And on, I think, 2 occasions, they pressured me to fill a slot and preach a slot at that conference. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it. I fought against it. But in the end, I agreed. Those are the only 2 times that I know of in my life I have ever sent out an invitation for people to come to a meeting when my name was on that invitation as one of the speakers. I don't like it. I've never had a youth rally here where I was the preacher. I am not going to host a meeting and ask you to come hear me preach. I'm just not going to do it. But I understand. I've been Brother Hilton's pastor for 30 years. And if it was me being installed, I would want my pastor to do the installing, to preach the message. So we've got this confluence of disparaging feelings, not disparaging, but disparate feelings. I don't want to invite you to hear me preach. He wants me to preach this service. So here's what we decided to do. We're going to do this installation. It will be official as of that Tuesday night, which, by the way, the reason for Tuesday night the 14th is because it was on April the 14th, of 1996 that the church elected me as pastor. And so that night will actually mark my 30th anniversary. All right, so I will fulfill 30 years
To the day.
as pastor to the day on that date.
Hmm.
He will become pastor. As of that night, he is pastor. But in June, on June the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 7th, that's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. There is something going on Saturday. We can mention that if I remember. But June the 3rd through the 7th, we will celebrate my 30 years as pastor and his installation as pastor. So there's been some confusion even among our own membership because I'm constantly saying that, there's just a few days left, a few weeks left for me to be pastor. And then we're sending out flyers. Everybody come for the anniversary services and installation in June. And so there's been confusion. I thought I had explained all of this. Obviously, I didn't, at least not well enough. So let me do it now on Face the Truth. April 14th, he actually becomes pastor. But that's a kind of a private ceremony for the church family and a few family members and sons in the gospel. It's official that night. June, however, is the public celebration of these two events. And so hopefully that clarifies it. So we are inviting everyone to come June the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Now, these nights, each night has a special focus to it. All right. On June the 3rd, Pastor William Riley from Aransas Pass, my lifelong friend, he was in my wedding. We grew up together. We've traveled the world together. He had 3 girls. I had 3 girls. We've pastored in close proximity. He started a home missions church when I became pastor of the closest thing to a home missions church that I will ever experience. I took a church of 6 regular attendees. And he started a church just a few hours from me. We've shared life together. And so on Wednesday night, June the 3rd, Pastor Riley will preach a commemoration service. This service commemorates my 30 years as pastor of the Truth Church. That's the focus. That's what we're going to look at. That's what we're going to talk about, is the 30-year history that I have with this assembly. Now, Brother Riley's been told, preach anything you feel like preaching. You don't have to preach about that. You just preach. But the service itself, I think we're planning to do a slideshow presentation. The service itself will commemorate my 30 years as pastor. That's Wednesday night, June 3rd. Thursday night, June 4th, is what we're calling a commendation service. This has my fingerprints all over it, obviously, with the alliteration, commemoration, commendation. We'll talk about Friday night. Thursday night is a commendation service. Bishop Tom Johnson, who I look to now as my pastor, will preach that service. That night is going to be focused on my new role. I am moving from the role of pastor to the role of bishop of the Truth Church. But beyond that, because really that, for all intents and purposes, is a title only. I have been and will continue to be Brother Hilton's pastor. And so in that regard, he'll probably refer to me as bishop. You other men that are my sons in the gospel refer to me as bishop. That's not a title I've requested, a title that's been granted. All right. And that's going to be, I want the church, I just want to distinguish for them. I'm not their pastor. They've got problems at home, problems on the job, problems spiritually. I'm not the man they come to. Brother Hilton will be that man. I'm the man he comes to, but they go to him. And so it's going to be a new role. But my role is not just bishop of this church. Where my role is really changing is that I am going to now be basically a full-time evangelist / missionary. And so really the title that I'm giving myself is missionary evangelist. I'm going to focus more on what's going on in Africa, but I'm also going to I'm not moving over there. I'm not spending all my time over there. And I hope that doors are going to open for me in other countries and on other continents. I've already been talking to missionary Mike Vaughn, who is in Mexico, about perhaps coming down to Mexico and spending a few weeks, helping him with the work there. I've been in touch with Bishop Lambeth about going to South America and spending some time with them, helping with the work there. Perhaps Central America, there's a potential of a door opening in Central America. So I'm going to continue to do missions work, and I'm going to do evangelizing. I want to travel the United States preaching and teaching, especially teaching. That's been my aim, my goal, really my calling for many years. But I'm not going to invite myself. I'm not going to call them in and say, do you have these dates open? Would you consider having me come? That's just something my pastor early on, Elder Davis, stressed that to us. If you've got a real call, if this is the will of God, the doors will open. He would quote the fact that the callings of God will make room for themselves. And so this is where the challenge comes in for me, Brother Goff, because the Truth Church is not large enough to provide me with a full-time income. I don't have a retirement plan. I'm drawing Social Security. My net Social Security check is a little over $300 a month. So I can't live on $300 a month. Now, my wife signed up for spouse's benefits. They informed her that she would be drawing just under $200 a month. She drew that for the month of December, the month of January, and the month of February. Just last week, she received a letter saying you will no longer receive that because you are about to turn 65. You're going on Medicare. Medicare is going to cost you $202 a month. Your spousal benefit is $198. You owe us money.
Oh, my.
So what I'm drawing in Social Security is obviously going to be decreased to help cover her Medicare, and she'll get nothing Social Security wise. Now, we are looking at a supplemental plan that I'm hoping will take care of some of that expense, but still it's not going to be a lot. Okay. So my point is this: when we make this transition in April, what little bit I'm drawing Social Security is not enough to sustain us. And I have literally poured my life into the work of God, contributing to this church and to the work in Africa, to the point that I don't have a huge retirement fund to live on. This is a major step of faith for my wife and me. All right. Now, Brother Hilton has graciously said, we're going to help take care of you. And I appreciate that. But I have stressed to him, I want you to be full-time pastor. I do not want you working a job so you can support me. I won't have that. I refuse. I will just turn around and write the check right back to the church. I am not going to allow him to work a job to support me. It's just not going to happen. And so as the church grows, he wants to help. That's fine. But right now, there's not enough to provide full-time financial support for my wife and me. And we don't have that in any kind of retirement fund. I've got a 403B. There's not much in it. I can start withdrawing from it, but there are tax issues involved with that. So, in other words, we're going to be totally dependent on the compassion of others, being willing to invite us to come, teach, preach, whatever. That's the move we're about to make. And I've never, again, except for a very short period of time, and we were very, very blessed then. Number one, we had an agreement with the church at that time. 20% of the tithing would come to me. That wasn't a huge amount, but that was in place for a very short period of time. Before the man that took my place requested to end all of that. But I did have a pastor who was very kind, very generous, that made a monthly commitment to us. His church was supporting us to the tune of $1,400 a month. That's a sizable amount coming from one church. Still not quite enough for a person to live on these days. We own a house. Our house is not paid for. We own a car that is not paid for. We've got all the bills that everyone else would have. So this is brand new territory for me. And let me just say this, that this is not a pity party time. This is not an appeal for contributions. I've never done that. In fact, if you go to our church website, one of the things that I've stressed about our website, we are making it very hard to find if somebody wants to donate to the Truth Church. Where almost every church I know of, you go to their website and donations or contributions is at the top of the page. You got to really search to find ours. I don't want anybody thinking that we are out for money. And so this podcast is not about trying to get people to feel sorry for us, get people to send money to us. Not what it's all about. In fact, if you're a saint in somebody else's church, don't you dare send your contributions to us. If you feel like we need your support, you send it through your pastor, but don't you dare send it to us. We don't want that. And that's not what this is all about. I'm just trying to explain what's about to take place so our listeners will know what's happening. Really, I want to share what my dream is. And it's been my dream since I was a young man. When I came to this church 30 years ago, it was already my dream that at some point I would step down as pastor. And my hope was that I would have enough finances that I could spend the rest of my years going to home missions churches, spending time with young pastors, sharing with them the wealth of information that's been handed to me over my many years of ministry. At this point, I've been in ministry for over 50 years. I've pastored for over 40 years. I don't have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of experience. And I want nothing more than to be able to simply go in and sit down with these home missionaries and these young pastors. I don't want them to have to pay me. I don't want them to have to cover my expenses. I'm telling you, my burden is that I could go in at my own expense and spend however much time a home missionary needs me, whether it's teaching his church or just encouraging him, just letting him pick my little pea brain. and him not be out one dime. That's what I want to do. That's what I hope to do. But it's going to take a series of miracles for that to happen. But God is a miracle worker. He has provided. I could be here all day just talking about the many, many times that we had nothing and God just stepped in and took care of it. In fact, I think I've told this story on Face the Truth before. The very first message I ever preached, I was 13 years old. This was not a youth service. This was not a children's church. This was in Wednesday night midweek service in the little church where I prayed through in Savoy, Texas. On a Wednesday night, I preached. This sounds like a very childish title, but I was a child. I was 13 years old. I prayed. I didn't get this out of a book. There was no internet in those days. I prayed. I searched the scriptures. Nobody taught me how to build a sermon. My pastor didn't even tell me. He just told me he wanted me to preach. 13 years old. And I preached, trust in God, not in man. That was my sermon. Preach from the book of Psalms. It's better to trust in the Lord than in chariots. And I told the story of Asa, king of Judah, who sought to the physicians rather than reaching out to God. And I just preached a very simple message. We've got to put our confidence in God and let Him take care of us. That was my message, Brother Goff. Can I tell you, I was 13 years old. I'm 66. So that's been 53 years ago.
My.
I preached that message. And can I tell you that for 53 years, I've lived that sermon. For 53 years, I've been at the brink of financial collapse. I've watched the devil almost destroy my family, not my wife and I, but close family members. I've watched the enemy almost destroy churches that I pastored. I've had men of God I trusted in turn on me. But through it all, I never lost my confidence in God. And through it all, God stepped in every time.
My.
Not always when I wanted Him to. In fact, most of the time, not when I wanted. Most of the time, it was more akin to the raising of Lazarus. All right, God, this situation's been dead 4 days. Are you coming or not? But every time, God has proven Himself. I did not know I was going to get emotional on this podcast, but here it is. Every time God has proven Himself faithful to me. And Brother Goff, He's the same yesterday and today and forever. He changes not. I am not worried about my future. I am not concerned about this transition. I'm telling you, God's proven to me for over half a century. He'll take care of me.
Yes, sir.
And He's going to do it. I know that He will. And so this is not a pity party. I am not doing this Face the Truth live so people feel sorry for me. I don't want that at all. I do not want anybody feeling sorry for me. God has been good to me. And he continues to be good to me. And I know that's going to be my testimony till the day I draw my final breath. I'm just trying to explain. Here's what's about to happen. Everything's going to change. Now, as doors open, it's going to be harder and harder for me to find a time that I can face the truth. But I've had so many people come to me and beg me not to cancel this podcast that I am making it a priority. If there is any way I can work it into my schedule and work it with Brother Goff and Brother Hilton, we're going to have Face the Truth once a month. If there's any way we can do it, we're going to do it. But I just want you to know this is what's happening. It's going to impact Face the Truth. It's going to affect Face the Truth. With this transition, it's going to have an impact. And I want everyone to know what's going on. And to those pastors that are out there, look, let me pledge to you, if you need me but can't afford to bring me, please let me come. Please let me come. Let me be a blessing to you. I'm not asking for your money. I'm not asking you cover my expenses. God will take care of me. I just want to help you. What kind of led to all of this? To this transition coming when it came. A number of months ago, I was asked to go preach for a man that's just took a church not long ago. A lot of problems in that church. He's fighting a lot of battles. He's doing a great job, but he's fighting a lot of battles. And I've just been feeling this something going on in my heart and my spirit for some time now. Of course, I've battled health issues. You're aware of that. Many others are aware of that. My health has not been good. In fact, at the beginning of 2024, I think it was, I had to take 3 months off. Went on a 3-month sabbatical, trying to get my health back. I still have battled. It's just been a constant thing. And then I've watched a church that I'm very familiar with fall into almost total collapse because a good man held on to it longer than his health would allow him. And he waited until he was in such bad shape physically, mentally, really. He waited till that point to start doing anything about trying to bring somebody else in. And by then, it was a total disaster. And that started working on me. Here I am having these health issues. I've spent 30 years of my life fighting for this church. If something happens to me, I don't want to see the same thing happen to the Truth Church. So what happened to the church I was just discussing? And so that began to eat at me. That began to work on me. And then, like I said, I went to preach for this man. And we went to lunch and we sat down and he opened up and began to just bare his heart to me. And I began sharing with him some similar experiences that I've had through the years. Because let me tell you, let me say this, Brother Goff. God, for whatever reason, God moved me to a number of different churches through the years. In every case, the church was better when I left it. I did not leave in a time of discouragement. But each time God sent me to a church that had a specific problem or group of problems, and God threw me in the midst of that to work it out. And I would be there long enough to get that problem resolved. And God would say, it's time to move.
Hmm.
Just as I was starting to see the kind of results I had hoped for, prayed for, believed for, preached about,
Right.
trusted God to give me, just as those things started to happen, God would say, now's the time.
Did that help those churches move forward? For the most part, in every example that you said for those churches you pastored, did they succeed after that?
Yeah, they, you know, again, it depends. It depends because generally speaking, the man that I would turn it over to did well. It was somewhere along the way.
Sure.
And here's the thing, Brother Goff, and I said this to the Truth Church the other night in a little private meeting we had just with the saints here, but I can say this in public. There is a principle. Jesus made a statement, but it's more than a statement, it's a principle. When an unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he'll walk through dry places until he eventually comes back to the same place he was cast out of. And if he finds it open, he goes and brings 7 more that are worse than he is. And somebody in the crowd said, "You're 7 times worse." I said, No, he comes back with 7 more. And someone hollered, "You're 8 times worse." I said, No, he comes back with 7 that are worse than he is. I don't know how much worse, but each one of them is worse. And so this thing magnifies. If each of these spirits is twice as bad, that's the equivalent of bringing 4.
Sure.
And the end result is 15 times. And so I'm just saying that this principle affects churches. You take authority and drive a spirit out of your church. If that opening ever becomes available to that spirit again, you got to stay on top. You got to be diligent. If that thing ever opens to a spirit again, you're not just going to deal with that spirit. You're going to deal with multiple times worse when it all starts coming back. And so, having said that, when I would turn it over to a man, I can't think of an instance, one exception, where really they never fully submitted to my leadership. And in the end, God sent a prophet of God, literally a prophet of God, to come in and prophesy judgment on them.
Mm.
And so that was the one exception. But even then, when I left the church, in a lot of ways, the church was better than I found it. I can't honestly tell you that they went on to success.
Sure. Well, they were given the
Okay.
opportunity for
They were given the opportunity. And in
Yep.
fact, they were given a promise from that prophet. There was a very clear promise from that prophet. Now, we're talking about a church where when I went there running maybe 160, 170, within the first 3 months that I was there, we prayed 30-something people through to the Holy Ghost.
Wow.
We shot up well over 200. So we're talking about a good-sized congregation. This man of God, Elder D.C. Moody, he's gone on to his reward now. Elder D.C. Moody, he had never preached there. He knew nothing about it. Long story, I had 2 different men, unconnected. I was on the phone talking to them. Both of them, without knowing the other had done this, both of them said to me, "I feel like you need to call D.C. Moody and have him preach for you." Well, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established, right? And so I called him. And we had met. We didn't really know each other, but we had met. So when I called him, I said, "Elder Moody, I want you to come." He said, "Brother Riggin." He had that gruff voice,
Yes.
"Brother Riggin, God already told me I was going there. He said, I don't even know where it is. That's what he told me. I don't even know where it is. But God told me a year ago I was going there to preach. I've just been waiting on your phone call.
My.
I said, well, Elder, you come. He said, I need 5 nights. I said, you can have whatever nights you want. He said, Monday through Friday. I said, you got it. Brother, that was the extent of our conversation. We didn't talk. I didn't tell him what was going on. He walked in from the first night, quoting those people word for word, pointed one man out and told him, if you don't straighten up, he turned and looked at a group of kids. He said, these kids right here are going to be lost because of you. He didn't know those were those men's grandkids.
Wow.
He didn't know any of that. I'm just telling you, God used that man in a prophetic way. But he stood up one night and told them, he said, God spoke to me and said, if just 3 men in this church will stand behind this pastor, God will turn this thing around and give you revival. Just 3 in a church of 200. But there weren't 3. There weren't 3. So God gave them the opportunity. All right, I'm way off the topic here, but I'm just saying I didn't just change churches because, okay, we got problems. I'm not going to deal with this. No, I took it with a problem. God helped me to work through that problem. And then I turned it over to someone else without that same problem. All right. So I said that to say my 42 years of pastoring have been more focused on dealing with problems than anything else. In fact, the night I announced this transition to the church, the title of my message was From Defender to Deliverer. And I told the church, I said, I've spent 30 years defending this church. That's what I've done. I've battled every spirit that's come along. I've spent 30 years defending it. But now it's time for God to send you a deliverer who will lead you into the promised land. Moses was the defender of the people. He stood between even God's wrath and the people. Moses was their defender, but Joshua was their deliverer. And Joshua led them to great victory. And I just believe with all my heart that's what's going on. That's what's going to happen right here at the Truth Church. I've had to spend the last 30 years. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness.
Yes.
Didn't go to the land of promise. But he defended God's people against Amalek, against the wrath of God, against plagues. Moses was their defender. And then Joshua became their deliverer. And I'm saying that to say, I started out with an appeal. If you're a pastor of a home missions church, a young pastor, a struggling congregation, again, I don't have a lot of answers, but I got a whole lot of experience. And if I can be of benefit to you, please, I'm begging you, do not consider the finances. Do not. I will come. If you can't pay me anything, if you can't cover any of my costs, I'm telling you, I'm making a public promise right now. I will come. I'll be there. I'll do it as soon as I can do it. That's my pledge. That's my promise. I'm going to do it. And God will take care of me. Somewhere down the road, God will make it up to me. All right. So I've got way off the subject here of what I was wanting. Well, I guess not really, because this is all about what does the future look like? And that's what I'm telling you. This is what the future looks like for me, for Face the Truth, for Brother Hilton. This is what it looks like. But where I did get off subject is I was trying to outline what is each night of this meeting going to be, because each night's got a separate focus. So if you remember way back at the beginning, Wednesday night the 3rd, commemoration, commemorating 30 years pastoral service. Thursday night, June the 4th, commendation. This is where we're going to focus on my new role as missionary evangelist. And then on Friday night, June the 5th, commissioning service. So commemoration, commendation, commission. The commissioning service is where we're going to celebrate the installation of Brother Jared Hilton as the new pastor. He will already have been pastor at that point for about a month and a half, but we're going to celebrate it. We're just going to do it that night. It's going to be focused on that. And Brother John Burgess from Colorado Springs, Pastor Burgess, will be preaching that service on Friday night. Saturday, there's not a church service, but we're going to have a special meal for our church family. This is our time. I've told our church family, now I do want to back up and say this. To the ministry that come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to serve you after church. But we need you to RSVP. We need to know how many are going to be there. So if I'm right, Brother Hilton, the website for the RSVP is just simply olathetruth.com/RSVP. So that you just go to that website, olathetruth.com/RSVP. And this will help us know how many that we need to prepare for. All right, because we plan to serve the ministry after church each night. But I told our church, I don't want them wore out. I know how conferences are. I don't want our church serving. I don't want them cooking. I don't want them, because then they've got to leave halfway through the service to get the food ready. They don't really get to enjoy it. They stress all day long. I don't want that going on. We're going to do something simple. I'm just telling you up front, we're not having banquet meals every night. It's going to be something simple. Sloppy joes and chips, soup and salad. It's going to be something simple, but it's just a time for the ministry to fellowship together, for me to show my appreciation to those ministers that make the sacrifice to come. All right? So we'll do that Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. On Saturday, we're going to have a special catered meal for the church family. This is my thank you gift to the church. I don't want them cooking. I don't want them slaving over it. I want to serve them. I want them to have this special time, 30 years that they've been faithful. Now, not all of them have been here all 30 years. In fact, I've just put out a request for everybody to tell me, how long have you been a part of the church under my leadership? We've got some that have been here 30 years. We just got a text last night from a couple that's been here. She prayed through before he did. For her, it's been 28 years, I think. He came in within a year after that, so about 27 for him. I know we've got one that was here 21. His wife's been here, I think, 3 years now. So, and then, of course, Brother Hilton's been here the full 30. His wife's been here almost 4. So, it's a little, but we've got mixed numbers, but this is something I've asked everybody to do. And then we've got some that are fairly new to the Truth Church, some that have only been here a year or less. So I want every one of them to feel a part of this special celebration, their faithfulness, their willingness to allow me to be the pastor, the fact that they've stood with me, they've stood behind me, they've supported my wife and me. I appreciate that. And so Saturday is just for them. All right. Most likely our sons in the gospel, I'm speaking out of turn. I hadn't thought to ask my wife about this, but most likely sons in gospel and their families as well, a part of that day. Because some of them are sticking around even to lead the services for us on Sunday, which brings me to the next thing, which is Sunday morning and Sunday night. Bishop Johnson will be preaching Sunday morning, Pastor Burgess Sunday night. No focus, no theme that night. We're leaving that to whatever they feel, whatever they want to preach, those 2 services. But that's the schedule for those nights. Now, I just need to say this. Very shortly after these services in June, the sports world is going to converge on Kansas City. The World Cup soccer tournament is coming to Kansas City. They are expecting a crowd of 1 million people to come into this metro area. 1 million. Now, the population of the Kansas City metro, I don't think is quite 3 million. So we're talking about an increase of over 33% during a short period of time.
Wow.
The expectation is they're going to fill every hotel room, every Airbnb, whatever's available. They're expecting it, especially during the World Cup events, they're expecting those to be fully taken. Now, they are saying some are coming in early. Some of the teams are having to come in for training. They're training right here in Kansas City for some of them. And so I'm just telling you, now, again, it's not happening the week of the transition. Thank God we didn't postpone it any longer. So it's not happening during that week, but there will most likely be people coming into the area already by that time. Do not wait to make reservations. If you are going to make a reservation, do it now. Make plans right now. Now,
They can visit olathetruth.com/RSVP to find 2 of our hotels that are giving us a special rate.
all right, thank you. I was just getting ready to ask that question. If the hotel information was on the RSVP page, and it is Holiday Inn Express's suites at Ridgeview and K10 and 4 Points by Sheridan, also on Ridgeview and K10, right in that area. We've got 2 hotels that have offered us a very special price if you'll mention the Truth Church when you book. All right. Now, listen, because of all this, expect rates to go through the roof. This is a locked-in rate. Still sounds a little high to some, but it's a locked-in rate.
To be clear, and I'm sorry the camera's not coming on for those that are watching on Teams, but the 12%, so it's kind of a unique deal. The lady gave us a 12% off the lowest price or $149. So if you get online, so it really depends on when you book. If you book at $120, $130, $130 per night, you get an additional 12% off of that. But if they've guaranteed us a maximum rate of $149.
Okay.
So
All right. I know one evangelist texted me the other day and told me he called 4 Points and they gave him the 149 rate.
okay. So we should call them back for him and see if they'll give us the 12% off the lower number, because likely even right now, if I were to go to Google, I'll check it out
Yeah.
and see.
Okay. Yeah. We don't have to do all that while we're live on Face the Truth, but just making everyone aware that is the rate that he was quoted, $149 a night. Now, maybe you'll be able to get a little bit cheaper than that. We're going to talk to them to make sure. Maybe whoever was booking was not aware, didn't look up this special rate. I don't know, but he told me that they told him their normal rate for the nights he's going to be here was $229.
Well, if that's the case, if that's their current rate for that time frame, it probably is. Yeah, right now it's so. Just to give you an idea of how much the World Cup is affecting our rates, just earlier this year, I was booking folks at $115, $129 a night, and then right now, looking at it, if we were to book it on April the 9th, which is obviously several months, 2 months before, it's 184. So putting it on those dates, you're looking at no question about the
Yeah.
price.
It's summer month
already
anyhow,
affected.
and the summer months and the summer months, every hotel's price goes up during the summer regardless. But with this World Cup coming, they've just really raised the price. But that's why I say you don't want to wait until the last minute and hope you can find something. And you may be able to find something cheaper right now than what we're offering. If you can, please feel free to do that. But I'm just telling you, you don't want to wait until May or really even April to book. You want to get your reservations right now. If you're only going to be here one night or if you're going to be here for the whole time or whatever, get your reservations now. Don't wait. Do it now because these rooms will fill up. Now, I don't think there's a deadline for getting that rate. I think that's a special thing that they've worked out with our church. We're very thankful for that. In fact, they're telling us if we bring in special speakers, they're going to honor that rate at any time during the year. But just so there's no deadline on it, but the rooms will fill up. Okay. We don't have rooms blocked. Instead of blocking a certain number of rooms, we negotiated this rate. So there's no deadline, but neither is there any time period where the rooms are already locked in. So if you're going to make a reservation, you got to do that right away. All right. Anything else that we need to say about that, Brother Hilton, that you can think of?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So having said all that, just wanting to explain that. Now, again, part of my goal, my vision is to work with home missionaries, with young pastors, spend some time with them. But it also is, as I mentioned, to be more involved with missions. And so I thought it might be good if we take a little bit of time during today's podcast to talk a little bit about A to Z missions. This is something that I began back in 2013. We've talked about it in previous podcasts. Door opened for me to deal with a group of Trinitarian pastors, and we converted them, virtually 100% of them, in that meeting in June 2013. They started telling their friends, brought us back in October of that year, but also invited people from other countries on the continent of Africa. That began opening doors. I founded this missions organization where we've been going over in the past. Pre-COVID, we were going 4 to 6 times per year to hold doctrinal conferences with Trinitarians. We're not reaching into UPC groups, ALJC groups. We're not doing any of that. We are strictly reaching Trinitarians. And the question always, well, how do you do that? Well, generally we have some contact. The Ministerial Alliance is big in Africa, having some kind of local ministerial group. In fact, some countries require that their pastors belong to a ministerial alliance. They can't hold a ministry license. They can't pastor a church if they're not part of a ministerial alliance. So it's a big deal in Africa. And in almost every situation, God has given us somebody with that connection to that alliance, where the alliance would invite us in, and then they would invite the alliance to come. And that's how we've got these doors opened. We just, a little over a week ago, got home from Cape Town, South Africa. And I'm going to tell you, phenomenal response. These guys don't know what we're teaching. When they come to a meeting, they don't know. We bill this as thy word is truth. We're going to help you get back to the Bible. That's the way we advertise it. So they come in fully expecting we're going to teach them things about the Bible. And the sad truth is, most schools of theology in Africa, my experience has been, in these guys that we've converted, they're the ones that have told me they've been through these schools. Some of them got PhDs in theology. They tell me these schools don't teach Bible. They teach management. They teach leadership. They don't teach Bible. So these guys are hungry. Many of them are hungry to know more about the Bible. So this is a great door for us. So we go in, they're there, they're ready to learn about the Bible. We start taking them through a series of lessons that I feel like God helped me to put together. I give the outline to whoever's there to help us. I tell them, you make it your own. There's just certain points that have to be covered because we're going to build. Each lesson will build on something said in the one before it until we finally get to the place. We've taught them how to properly interpret Scripture. We've taught them that you've got to let Scripture interpret Scripture. You've got to have more than one witness for anything you believe. We lay all this out. And then I step up and say, now I'm going to take all that you've learned today and I'm going to apply this to a scripture, to a subject that's highly controversial, subject of water baptism. And let's determine what the Bible really says. And I start laying out what the Bible says about water baptism. And I'm telling you, Other than the first time we went over in June 2013 and maybe that second trip in October of that year. But beyond that, I don't remember ever seeing the kind of response that we got in Cape Town. And this may have even superseded those because I wasn't halfway into my lesson on water baptism, and a number of people in the crowd started shouting, "Do it now!
My.
Baptize us now! We're ready now! Don't wait! Where's the water?" I mean, they were ready.
My.
You talk about firing a preacher up.
That's right.
Now, the problem is we're renting a little hall, literally a hall. Had about 125 in attendance, but it was wall to wall people, barely a narrow aisleway down the middle where somebody could get out to go. No restrooms in that hall. Just, there was one restroom in kind of a foyer area before the little hall, and they let the women use that one, and then you had to go to a different building for the men. Little narrow passageway for you to get down that aisle, packed with people. Um, but but I'm telling you, but there was no water. There was no baptistry available. We'd made plans to have a one of those air pump pools brought in the second day. We didn't have anything handy that first day, and we do this for a reason, because generally speaking, we want them to know they're going to need to bring clothes to get baptized, because we're going to completely immerse them, and we want them to have time to think about it. We don't want it to be the just the emotion of the moment. Okay, so they were ready. They were ready that first day. We weren't ready to baptize them the first day, but we promised them, assured them we would baptize them the next day. And so then the next day I taught on the Godhead and confirmed everything. Said, look, this is the reason why we baptize in Jesus' name, because there's only one God. And so just confirmed it all. And we ended up baptizing, I think, 32 Trinitarian pastors and or wives in the name of Jesus Christ.
Thank the Lord.
That's fun. Look, that's revival. Any way you look at it. 30
Yes.
plus Trinitarian pastors. I think anybody would call that a revival. And there were others. And this is one of the things that we face is many of them get there by public transportation. Public transportation only runs at certain times, especially to get them to whatever their remote location might be. So there were literally some that said, I want to be baptized, but I got to catch the bus. And they would literally have to walk for miles if they didn't catch the bus. For some of them, there just was no reasonable way for them to get home if they didn't catch that bus at that time. Now, Brother Stewart and I are working on trying to remedy that. We don't have the finances to bus them all in. So, we just have to do with what we can. I know one time I said something about not having a pool, and somebody said, well, go to Walmart. No, you're in Africa. There is
Right.
no Walmart. All right. At least not in South Africa. There are some similar things, but not close. It's not the same. Okay. So, these are the challenges we face, but this is kind of what's going on. And so I really want to be able, for example, I'm already working with Brother Stewart to go over mid-August and stay until mid-September. I plan to be there for a month. Now, this is all at my expense. God's got to provide. I don't have the money to live in Africa for a month. I don't have it. God's got to provide, but I'm trusting that He will. In fact, right now, I don't think I've even got the money to buy the plane tickets to get there for both my wife and me. But God will provide it. All right, we're just trusting it's going to happen. But this is one of the things we want to do, and so I thought it would be good uh, if we took just a moment on this podcast and talked about A to Z, talked about the difference between what Brother Stewart's doing, what I'm doing, because I know there are some who think, well, I'm giving to Brother Stewart, that ought to cover you. I don't get one penny from what you give to Brother Stewart. Brother Stewart does not pay my way over there. Brother Stewart doesn't cover my expenses. He's a missionary with a family. In fact, he's now got a married son that is helping him with the work, that the contributions that go to Bible Truth Ministries for Brother Stewart, that supports his family. That supports what he's doing. He's doing the further training of those that I convert. He doesn't work for A to Z. A to Z does not give him any money. Well, I say that. We do. I generally send him a check. I sent him a check before we left for this last meeting for $5,000. But here's the problem. That doctrinal conference cost $10,000. I don't have another $5,000 to pay for it. My goal is to always pay for the doctrinal conferences. Let him only worry about his family and further training. That's what I want to do. And that's what I have done up until now. When COVID hit, we had to slow down. Of course, we didn't go to Africa during COVID. And then after Africa, my own physical condition has deteriorated to some degree, and I can't make 4 trips a year. I'm only trying to make 2 trips a year now. I only send out newsletters when I go. Because I'm not going as often, because I'm not promoting it as often, contributions to A to Z have dropped drastically. And now we just don't have the funds we once had. And like I said, that one conference alone cost $10,000. That's not including my expenses. That's not including my plane fare. And I want to tell you, this is how frugal we are. My wife and I drove to Dallas, Texas. We went through and visited with her mom. Her mom was celebrating a birthday, so we went by, spent time with her mom for her birthday, and then drove to Dallas. We flew in and out of Dallas, Texas, because it was $1,000 cheaper per person to fly out of Dallas. So we saved $2,000 by making that drive. But I'm going to tell you, after you've been up all night on a flight, coming home from Africa, we flew from Johannesburg, South Africa to Atlanta, Georgia, nonstop, 15 and a half hours, nonstop. Full plane. Crowded. Well, I say full plane, full row. There were several rows that only had one person on it. But for some reason, the guy on our row would not move. Had he just moved to one of those other rows, both of them would have had an extra seat. Instead, he stayed planted where he was, leaving all 3 of us crowded and others literally stretching out across the 3 seats.
Wow.
So we were crowded for 15 and a half hours. Get to Atlanta, have a 5-hour layover in Atlanta, a 2-hour flight to Dallas, had to wait, I think, about an hour, hour and a half for a shuttle bus to take us to our car, and then drive 8 hours from Dallas back home. All of that so we could save $1,000 per person. We didn't make it the full 8 hours. We were exhausted. We stopped over in Oklahoma, got a city. I had enough points in my Holiday Inn Express account that we got a room for free. But I'm just telling you, I'm not wasting money for A to Z. I'm doing everything I can to be as frugal as I can. We just don't have the funds we need. I would love to have 3 or 4 conferences a year. Right now, I'm having trouble paying for 1 conference. And so if you're a pastor listening to this, if you would consider supporting A to Z, we would appreciate that. If you think it would help to have me come to your church and present A to Z to your congregation. Now remember, I've got 2 things going on here. I'm stepping into full-time evangelism, and I'm working on this missions effort. And so if you bring me in as an evangelist or a teacher, that doesn't take care of A to Z. If you bring me in to promote A to Z, it doesn't take care of the other. 2 separate entities altogether. Two totally different things. And then Brother Stewart and myself, two separate entities. So a lot of people don't think about that, but we've got all of that going on in the midst of this transition. All right. So I just want to throw that out there. I want everyone to be aware. Now you can go to A2Z. It's the number 2, the letter A, the number 2, the letter Z. A2zmissions.org. A2zmissions.org. And there you can sign up for our website. You get the email, the newsletter emailed to you. Sign up for our newsletter. We intentionally don't put a lot of information on the A to Z website because in the past, some of these ministerial alliances we've talked about have gone to that website, found out who we were, what we were preaching, and shut us down. And so we intentionally don't put a lot of information on the website. Don't look for it to have the latest info, but the newsletter will. Now, we just made some changes to the website where we are limiting it to limiting it to everywhere except Africa. So missionaries in other continents can also do it. And so because of that, we may start updating with the latest news, those kinds of things. But just understand why right now it's very simple, because those guys in Africa were using it against us.
So I have a method to donate on azmissions.org as well. So
Okay.
if you want to, you'll be able to join. Just go to, like Bishop said, A, the number 2, Z.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. So I'm glad to hear that. So these are some options for you to consider. Now, look, we've gone through all that. And we spent the whole time, and that's our lead up to this was all about how do you navigate this transition? Obviously, it's going to be a major transition. And it's not going to be an easy thing for me. Um, I deeply love these people. I've invested my life in them. I care when they're hurting. It's not going to be easy to walk through the doors of this church and know they're going through it and not ask them, would you come in my office? Let me talk to you. That's not going to be an easy thing for me to do. I have absolute confidence in Brother Hilton. If I didn't, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But just that side of me, I've been their pastor for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. For some of them, I've prayed their kids through. I've baptized their kids. For some of them, I've baptized and prayed through their grandkids. You think it's going to be easy for me to just walk through those doors and lay aside all sense of responsibility? This is not going to be an easy transition for me. And it's certainly not for my wife. And I asked a huge, huge favor of my wife, who's been listening online. And I asked her if she would join us to talk a little bit to you about her feelings and how this is such a difficult time for her. She may relate some of this to you, but she has been looking for podcasts and looking for answers. That's why I said that this is not an easy thing for me to answer. The question that was thrown to me at the opening of this podcast is not easy. It's not easy for either of us. And so for her, again, this is her identity. It's not just a title. It's not just a role. It's who she's been since she was 23 years old. She has been pastor's wife. And all that's about to change. And it's not easy for her. And I would ask your prayers for her, but I just thought it'd be good for the Face the Truth audience to hear from my wife. And I didn't think about this. I should have. I apologize. I should have thought about bringing her on. And we're down to just one car. Again, I'm trying to be as frugal as I can during all this. I literally sold 3 cars to buy one decent car so we could travel in. And so we're down to one car. I took that car to come to the church to do this podcast, not thinking That leaves her stranded. She has no way of getting here, so we're having to do this by phone, but I'm glad to have my wife here. I don't know exactly how we're gonna work this. I don't know, because I may need to comment along the way. Brother Hilton, you mentioned me putting my phone up to the mic, but I don't know. Honey, you wanna say something?
Hello.
We can hear.
All right, good. All right. So I'll just hold my mic right here and let her talk to you. I mean, hold my phone right here by the mic and let her talk to you. I told you I'm not on all cylinders. My body's not fully adjusted from the last African trip. It was rough. I'm just telling you, it's rough. Great, great results, but a rough trip. But anyhow, so I'm still a little sluggish. But anyhow, I'm going to let her just talk to you about kind of what she's experiencing, what she's feeling during all of this, and so I'm just going to open it up to her.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And this may get taken down real fast and edited and who knows what. But anyway, I will say the will of God is not always easy. I think a lot of times we think that it is, but it's right. The will of God is always right, but it doesn't mean it's easy.
Right.
And I've never even said this to my husband, but kind of the feeling that I have is like what a person would feel like when their boyfriend is stolen away. And so just the emotion of losing that relationship and, trying to figure out if you're going to do something wrong, say something wrong, um, and just make sure that you're supporting the will of God. And we do absolutely know that Brother and Sister Hilton are the will of God. We love them. The church loves them. We're excited for the future of the church. And again, we tried this once before and it didn't work. And I think that's a lot of anxiety. And unfortunately, I can't hardly change that. I want to change my perspective. I want to change my expectations. But we truly are very excited about Revival for Olathe. And I'm excited for the next chapter. Now, I thought me and Jesus had this conversation that we wouldn't get here. He was going to come. I wasn't going to have to deal with this, but I guess that was a one-way conversation. But here we are. So, um, just we covet your prayers for God to help us to always do and say the right thing, always to be a blessing, to be the support that this church needs, that the Hiltons need, and that others need. And I just want to do the will of God. I want to be a part of his plan and purpose, and I don't want to mess up what he's doing. I don't want to try to circumvent and make things happen. I'm absolutely not afraid of the financial side. I'm not afraid of that at all because God has shown me over and over and over again that he will do exceeding abundantly above all I can ask or think, and he will take care of me. And I have confidence in him.
You know, one thing just to kind of help explain a little bit of the conflict in all this, I think it's a great example to say that you feel like your boyfriend has been stolen away from you. Here's what complicates that. It's of course, it's not really being stolen, but to carry that analogy as imperfect as it is, but the person that's getting that boyfriend is someone you actually want to succeed. And so there's this huge conflict. I don't wanna let go, but I don't want to make them have a problem. And so I think that's probably the best analogy that could be used to help the listeners understand what's going on. And I know sometimes I laugh. There are times uh, we had a situation that Brother Hilton was talking to me about, and he said something to the effect of, how do you deal with this? And I said, well, welcome to pastoring, and I just laughed, and there's times that I've been kind of lighthearted about it. I have told my wife, in my heart, I'm so settled that it's the will of God that at times I do get a bit anxious and forget that, I am still pastor as of this moment. But yet when it really starts coming down to the reality of what's happening, just like Thursday night, to those that are not a part of the Truth Church, once every quarter we have what we call State of the Vision. It's kind of a play off of the State of the Union. But we do this quarterly rather than annually. And it's just a way for me to keep my vision in front of the church, to remind them this is where we're going. And then during that time, we'll talk about here's what's actually been accomplished, because sometimes people don't know what has been done. They don't see some of the things that get done behind the scenes, and not necessarily by me, but by those in leadership and the leadership teams and our outreach team. What's going on? Many people don't even know how many Bible studies are being taught right now. They don't have a way of knowing that. And so we bring that to the attention of the people once a quarter. Our media, the flyers, the publications, the advertisements that they do, a lot of people don't even realize. So we try to bring every team before the congregation and say, here's what we've accomplished in the last 3 months, and here's what we're going to try to accomplish in the next 3. And it's worked very well. We've seen tremendous amounts of progress and growth by doing this. But I announced to the church this past Thursday night would be my last time as pastor to present the State of the Vision. I can tell you there was very little levity as I prepared for that night. I don't show how I feel most of the time, especially in public. When I'm feeling heartache or whatever it is, however I describe it, most of the time nobody's ever going to know about that. But this has been an emotional time for me. And I've just tried to keep it buried because I do love this church tremendously. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but we've talked about the failed attempt 9 years ago. I came back to become pastor again at great personal expense. In fact, one of the elders overseeing the church told me up front, Brother Riggin, this is not the same church that it was 6 weeks ago. It's not the same. He said, there is a spirit that has been unleashed in this church. He told me, spirit of rebellion that has consumed this congregation in the last 6 weeks. That's what you're coming back to. But I love this church so much. Look, I could have continued doing what I was doing. I could have continued on. Like I said, I had men that were giving monthly support, that were taking care of me. I could have lived a much more comfortable life. I would have left this church on a very positive note and just been able to devote myself more to the work in Africa and seen perhaps even greater growth there. But my heart called me back to Olathe. And I had to come. The man who told me that the spirit of rebellion had consumed the church was exactly right. In fact, people that had been with me for 20 years turned on me and walked away. When the dust settled, we had a congregation of about 15 people. My sons in the gospel were all out pastoring or doing other works. It was me and me alone. The income just wasn't there. After 20 years of pastoring this church, 21 years to be exact, of pastoring this church, I stepped back into a situation where, when the dust settled, I went for months, over a period of a few years, where I was not able to take one penny from this church. It was at great personal cost. And I'm not saying that to build myself up. I'm just trying to express how deeply I love this church. I love this church. And the thought of me no longer being the pastor, that's not easy for me. And my wife's exactly right. The will of God's not always easy. The cross was the will of God for the man Christ Jesus. That certainly wasn't easy. Doing the will of God's not always an easy task, nor is it always enjoyable, but it's always right. And that's the thing. I want to do what's right. I want to do what's right, first of all, towards God. Secondly, I want to do what's right towards this church. I don't want to wait until my health collapses and then scrambling to try to figure out where do we go from here. And number three, I want to do what's right by my wife. I don't want her to have to continue with the stress of this for the rest of her life. I want her to be able to enjoy some years without having the headaches, the heartaches, the burdens. We've talked about many times. Bishop Westberg carried the load of his church and the district until just months before he died. And my wife and I have discussed, what if that man would have stepped away, at least from the district, when he originally tried it 2 years earlier and then went back. But what if he would have stepped away? He would have at least gotten 3 years of not having all of that pressure on him. And I'm not condemning him for what he did. I'm just trying to relate. This is the way I'm looking at it. If we can have a few years, and this is the final thing, is that I want to do what's right by my body. My body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. And I don't want to not waste, that's not the right word. I don't want to expend all of my energy and strength when I've had some of the greatest men in Pentecost invest in me. I feel like I owe an obligation to Elder Wayne McLean, to Elder James Davis, to Elder Jake Hutto. I feel like I owe an obligation to Elder Gary Howard, to Elder Tom Johnson. I feel like I owe an obligation. I could go on down. I've had some of the greatest men in the apostolic movement spend time with me, sharing with me, praying with me, investing in me. And how many years do I have left that are productive? I don't know. I made this statement to a man in Africa last week, and he said, "Oh, God's going to let you live till you're 90." I said, that's wonderful. Thank you for the vote of confidence. But none of us knows that. I'm looking at the man who was my pastor for 25 years, far greater man than I can ever hope to be. That in his prime developed Alzheimer's, and his voice has been silenced. I don't know how many productive years I have left. I'm sorry, I don't. And I've got so much bottled up inside of me that I've got to get beyond these four walls. I love this church. I love this church. I don't want the saints to listen to this and think I resent them, or please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Please, please, please. I'm just stating that I feel a call. I feel a push. The psalmist said it this way: I want to show your glory unto the next generation. I want to share what's been invested in me with as many people as possible. I've not allowed myself to do that as long as I've been pastor here. I've done my best to never miss more than 2 services in a row. I've done my best not to miss more than 2 services in a month for 30 years. But I feel this urge. I feel this call. I can't let my schedule be hindered by that anymore. If men need me, if men want me, I've got too much. Not that I'm smart, not that I'm wise. I just have experience and I have a burden. And I want to do something. And I feel like my wife can be a blessing to these wives. They need somebody to talk to. They need somebody to call. And my wife has been there right with me every step of the way, supporting everything I've done and helping me in every trial. She has experience and she can be a blessing to these wives. That's what it's all about. How are we going to do it? It's going to be the grace of God. We've talked about the grace of God in previous podcasts. The only way we're going to get this accomplished is God's going to give us the grace. Beyond that, I don't have any answers. I didn't mean to take up all your time, honey. Anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I appreciate you being transparent for our audience. I appreciate everything you've done through the years. I cannot tell you enough. Not one time when I have said it was God, not one time has she ever said no. Never. She's never fought me. And I appreciate that very, very much. She is an example of a preacher's wife to the nth degree. And I believe she's going to be a huge blessing to many churches in many places. Now, she won't take a podium. Don't ask her to speak at a ladies' conference. She's been asked to speak at Mother's Day meetings, and that's not her forte. That's not her cup of tea. But sitting around a table where she can just open her heart, I'm going to tell you, she is such a blessing to so many women. And honey, I appreciate that about you, and I want you to know that. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you for being a part of this podcast, for making yourself vulnerable, making yourself transparent. I appreciate it very much. I love you. I am so thankful. You've been my wife for almost 40. It's hard to believe. I remember celebrating my parents' 50th, celebrating her parents' 50th. Now we're only about 4 years away from celebrating our own. That's mind-boggling. But thank you for being who you are and who you have been so consistently over these 46 plus years.
You're welcome.
I love you very, very much. All right, Face the Truth audience. Where do we go from here? I did not expect this to be quite the emotional podcast it has been. But you can tell by the redness of my eyes and nose that this is not put on. It's not fake. Very real. It's very real. I love and appreciate Brother Hilton very much. I'm going to tell you, this is one of the only ways I can get through it is knowing, because I too, I've called it PTSD. I don't want to go into all the details for the podcast audience of just how tragic the last attempt was 9 years ago. I don't want to go through all of that. But I'm going to tell you, at the thought of trying another transition, there was a degree of what I've called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I think it's very real. I really do. That I've felt, no doubt my wife has felt. We've been through this once, and man, did it hurt. It was painful. But part of the pain was, and I'm saying this, I'm sure it'll somehow get back, so be it. Part of the pain was the individual I turned things over to soon made it very clear he did not want us around. We were going through all the things that we've discussed earlier and trying to figure all this out in our minds, trying to sort out our new role and new relationship. And then he just makes it very clear he doesn't even want us around. And suddenly it's like, you're done. You're washed up. You're over. And that made it extremely difficult for us because of the deep, deep love we have for this church. But what makes this one easier is knowing the man that's assuming the role this time around. And the very fact that when I first approached him about this upcoming transition, his response to me was, if you're not going to be involved, I'm not going to accept it. Now, that's what he told me. I'm not going to do this unless you're going to keep your hands on me and help guide me through this. And that's really, honestly, that's what I told the last man. I said to him with tears streaming down my face, I want your family to succeed. I am only here as an advisor to you. If you don't take my advice, that's fine. No hard feelings. I'm not telling you what to do. I know the people. I love the people. I've pastored these people at that point for over 20 years. I've got some insight. All I ask is talk to me. That's all I ask. Just talk to me. If you don't like what I say, if you don't think it's right, fine. But just talk to me. Unfortunately, he didn't even want that. But Brother Hilton's making it very clear. This is a new endeavor for him. He's never pastored, although he served as youth pastor for a larger youth group than we have congregation. And so it's not like he's totally inexperienced. And then he is my son in the gospel. I prayed him through. He was 1 week shy of being 3 years old when I was elected pastor. I should say 8 days. I was elected on April the 14th, and on April the 22nd, he turned 3. So really, other than that 1 year in Colorado Springs working with my dear friend, Pastor Burgess, other than that year, I've been the only pastor he's known. I'm the only pastoral style he's known. I don't think a transition could be any smoother than this one. I mean, we're already in the process of transition. April the 14th is just going to make it final and official. But we're really in that process now. I've been gone so much. I've been gone for most of December, most of January, most of February. It looks like things are going to slow down in March. I've had a couple of cancellations. It looks like I'm going to slow down a bit in March. But I've just been gone almost from the time we made the announcement.
Yeah.
Because we made the announcement in October, and I've been gone for the bulk of that time. And so really he's functioned as pastor in a lot of ways. And so it couldn't be any smoother. And so I don't have any apprehension about him. It's just, it's one of those things. I think he explained it the other day. He said somebody explained it to him this way, that once the body's gone through trauma, it's a natural thing for you to feel, what was the term that you used?
I don't remember basically, once your body has, even after it's healed, it's gone through that, you still remember. You still feel it. For the example I used was my personal traumatic deal where I had the accident on the ATV, and during the wintertime, I'll feel the cracking in my jaws. I'll feel misalignment with, joints, things that previously I just took for granted. And so even after the healing is done, there is still a memory there that lasts on. And then in some cases, there's a literal scar that will be evident. And, the healing is done. The scars remain.
Right, right. And I think too, I know for me that there's a natural tendency to try to protect that area. With you, the gas tank of that ATV hit you in the face, and so I would guess you're probably much more protective of your face. If something's coming towards you, the
Yeah,
reflex.
I remember one time in this is a funny story, a little bit of levity.
Okay, we probably need that right now.
Yeah. There was a time during service, I had just been back in church services after my recovery, and Bishop was preaching, and he had something, I've never seen him do anything like this, but there was a stack of songbooks in the pulpit, and he grabbed one of them and he threw it out in what I would describe as on the ladies' side, but it just landed right in the front and slid under the pews under the front pews on the ladies' side. And then he grabbed another one and he threw it out on the guy's side. It landed flat on the ground. And I'm sitting on the very front pew, just in from the center aisle. And I'm like, oh no, it's coming down the center aisle.
In the danger
I don't
zone.
know. Yes. And sure enough, one of those songbooks came flying down the center aisle, but it was off just slightly right towards my face. And so I ducked and it went right over my head. But so, yes, that's a great example of the protection and instinctive protection that
Yeah,
exists.
instinctive protection. That's what I was looking for. Don't ask me why I was throwing songbooks. I don't know.
I don't remember either.
I don't know if I was illustrating something I had done, because I know of one time when I was pastoring in Colorado that I did it. And I was preaching a message about Nehemiah and Tobiah. The Bible says Nehemiah went in and cast out all the household stuff of Tobiah. Well, Tobiah, was one of those that had ridiculed the building of the wall. He was one of Israel's biggest enemies, but he'd gone in and made this alliance with the priests, and they gave him a room in the temple. And Nehemiah hit the roof and went in, and the Bible says he cast forth all the households. So it's not like he went in and said, get your stuff out of here. He walked in, opened the window, and started throwing stuff out the window, because I don't want Tobiah in this house.
Yeah.
And so I was preaching that back when I was pastoring in Colorado, and grabbed a songbook and started throwing out Tobiah's stuff. And so I don't know if I was illustrating it that night. I don't know if I was hearkening back to that. Interestingly, I had one of the men in the church get very mad that I had done that. Of course, he had other problems, had major problems. So you know how people are. They're going to find an issue. So he got very mad that I'd done that. Boy, he was stewing over it. And I think it was the very next service, I had a guest speaker come in. And that guest speaker said, sometimes preachers, you don't understand them. You don't know what they're going to do. He said, sometimes they may just throw a songbook. He had no idea what I had done. He didn't know. Didn't really help the guy in question feel any better about it. But yeah, so I don't know why I was throwing songbooks that night. But yeah, thanks for that illustration. But I think that is kind of what, my wife and I, we've got this deep hurt. We can't help that. The scars are there. And I hope, pray, I've forgiven, moved on. I hope there's no bitterness. I'm telling you, anytime the subject comes up, I end up spending time in prayer saying, God, please, if I'm bitter about this, take it out of me. Take it out. I do not want to be bitter. I hope I'm not bitter. I pray I'm not bitter. When the man's name comes up, God, please don't let me feel bitter towards him. And bitterness is a strange thing, because you can think you're over it. If the Bible talks about the root, sometimes that root is down there deeper than you think. And so I really do pray to God there's no bitterness. But you can't erase the instinctive protectiveness. You can't erase the scar. It's there, and it's going to be there. And that's what I think PTSD is. I think once you've had this emotional trauma, after you've experienced that, there's this protectiveness that anything closely related is going to trigger those feelings again. And so I've got no doubt about how well Brother Hilton's going to do. I've got no doubt that he's going to honor me. I've got no doubt it's going to be a totally different situation. But I can't help the scars that are there. And as I approach this moment, something inside me wanting to withdraw, wanting to shy away, wanting to duck, if you please. Can't help that. It's there. So I appreciate our listeners just giving me today to kind of vent all of this and talk through all of this. And again, I hope for someone else that it helps them. I hope maybe somewhere in the future there'll be another man. Right now, you're not going through this, but somewhere in the future, you're going through it. And you remember this podcast, and you'll come back and listen and realize I'm not the only one having to deal with these feelings. Maybe we've helped someone. Brother Goff, Brother Hilton, any questions, comments from either of you?
No, sir. I'm good if Brother Hilton's good.
I am good.
How long have we gone today?
Right at 2 hours.
2 hours. So it's not our longest. I think 2 hours is probably good. Probably good. So thank you again, listeners. I am not sure when our next Face the Truth will be. Like I said, I've had some changes in my calendar. We got to get with Brother Goff after this is over, talk to him about his schedule, try to look at some dates to see when our next one is. If there's any way possible, we want to do it again in March, probably towards the end of March, if possible. April's going to be a challenge. May's going to be a challenge. June's going to be a challenge. But we're going to try to face the challenge so we can face the truth. So thank you all for bearing with me tonight. And again, thank you to my wife. I am so blessed to have her. I'm telling you. I've told people, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to shut up. If she dies before I do, just shoot me and get it over with. I am going to be absolutely worthless without her. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to be worthless. I depend on her. I rely on her. I can't make it without her. She's the greatest thing that ever happened to me outside of Jesus Christ. And I mean that. So, thank you all. Until next time, God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop Riggin, and thank you to everyone who has joined us for today's Face the Truth live event. We want you to know that we are here to help you in any way that we can. If there is anything that we can do for you, please don't hesitate to contact us. Send your prayer requests to prayer@olathetruth.com. That's prayer@olathetruth.com. If you live in the Kansas City metropolitan area and do not have a home church, we invite you to join us for our services this week, Sunday morning at 10 a.m., Sunday evening at 6 p.m., Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. For those who cannot attend, we will provide a live stream on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and our website, olathetruth.com/live. Until our next Face the Truth live event, take care and God bless.